Bro, that build was hard AF.
All right, what's up, boys? My name's Zombie Bride. So today I'm gonna be breaking down my remix for the Hypertrap Moonboy remix contest. So this remix was sort of weird because I'm used to working with tracks that are already complete and then remixing them. This was sort of different. This was Moonboy sends you this beta pack of his Hypertrap sample pack and tells you do whatever the hell you want with it. So that's what I did. Anyways, so this is what the final project looks like. I'm going to break it down. We'll start with the intro and then get into the rest of the track later, but let's hear the intro first. Okay, so that's going to cover the intro. Just so you know, pretty much everything in this project is bounced to audio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a earlier version of the project where everything is not bounced audio. The only reason I did that is my CPU was sort of exploding, and so I had to go into the project and just freeze and flatten everything just so my computer could handle it. I just had a bunch of Serum 2s and a lot of random effects on it, and so when you have a lot of post-processing, that sort of stuff tends to happen. So let's go into an earlier version of the project, and then I can sort of break down everything from there a lot easier. Okay, so we are in the earlier version of the project file. That way I can actually show you what's going on. It's going to sound a little bit different. Mostly master chain is not finalized, so it's before it actually ended up making all the final decisions on everything, so it's going to sound a bit different, but that's okay. It's going to do for now. Yeah, so let's go. So to start out this song, I sort of came up with this part. So this is kind of a happy accident. So Moonboy gave, I don't know if I can find it with samples. I know I can just click here and then find it, but anyways, he gave this like a ARP lead, and when I wanted to sort of extend it to make it a little bit longer so it takes more time to fill this space, I didn't actually do all the notes, and so it gave us this. Let's mute. And I like that a lot. I thought it was really cool. And this is a sort of like a background string thing, but especially with the main synth, it sounds really dope. So let's hear that. Wait, sorry, wrong thing. Where is the main synth? There it is. Okay, so what is a synth? So for a lot of this project, at least for the intros, I actually used presets from Serum, which is not usually what I do. I guess I didn't do it for this, which is kind of surprising, but honestly forgot. But you'll see later that I used a ton of presets, and normally I don't do that, but I only had a set amount of time to do this remix, and unlike before where I had usually around like 4 to 8 hours to work on music per day, my time has been shrunk substantially just by being an adult and having a lot more responsibilities than when I made music earlier on. And so I sort of had to play with the time that I had. I had about like an hour or two a day to work on this track for about 2 weeks. There was multiple days where I couldn't get any work done on it. I sort of had to, just use my time as wisely as possible. And so presets were kind of the way to go. I definitely don't recommend using presets unless you sort of already know what you're doing and you know when you should use presets and when you shouldn't. You should really focus on developing your own sound. That's super important. And if using presets doesn't take away from your sound, then I guess go for it. But I would definitely recommend learning sound design in every way, shape, or form, intro, build, drop, whatever the hell it is, before relying on presets or sample packs. It's going to help you in the long run. This is just coming from someone who's been doing it for like, I don't know, almost 10 years now. So, you know, take it as you will, but I definitely advise that. That's what I did to sort of get to where I'm at now. And I definitely wouldn't do it any other way if I had to do it again. So yeah. Anyways, so let's get into this patch here. I'm probably not going to break down every single patch. I'm probably just going to cover like main leads, maybe a couple accents that are sort of interesting and kind of move on. But yeah, so it's a relatively simple patch. A lot of my sound design just comes from listening to something and then just making decisions. There's not really, I don't know, I'm not like, I just make decisions. I don't necessarily know in the moment why I'm making that decision. I just go with what sounds good. And after having to explain it is a little bit hard, but that's okay. So yeah. That's the patch. Let's sort of turn a lot of the stuff off with one oscillator and no effects. This is sort of what it sounds like. So already it sounds like pretty good. We've just got like 3 oscillators detuned at different amounts with different amounts of unison. You've got a what is this wave even called? I forget. A triangle wave. Yes, I believe that's what it is. Triangle wave minus 1 octave with 9 unison. You've got a just standard saw wave, 5 unison, detune almost halfway. Yeah. And then you've got a another saw wave pitched down 2, 7 unison. And then, yeah, I don't know like clock terminology, but yeah, that's where it is. Who cares? Doesn't matter. And then something kind of interesting with the envelope. So you've got the attack at 1 millisecond and then the release at like 7.59 millisecond. Could the release be shorter or longer? Potentially, but that's just sort of where I found my sweet spot was for the sound. So that's kind of that. And then we've got the envelope on a few things. So you've got it on the cutoff, as we can see here. This is just a regular like MG Low 12. I pitched up the resonance because I quite enjoy doing that, especially for sort of lead type sounds. It can really help just give it character. So it's basically like opening with the envelope. And that's what gives it that like resonant barrel, almost not necessarily talkative, but maybe, sure, we can use that. Yeah, so that's kind of that. Nothing too much else going on here. Honestly, if I was given more time to do this, I would have probably gone more in depth with some of these sounds. But, you know, sometimes you're restricted on time. And so you're not able to push your sound necessarily as your sounds as far as you would like to. But that's okay. That's life. It is what it is. I've been using a ton of distortion overdrive lately. So that's sort of been where I'm at with that. I used to use a lot of faceplant and Faturator. I'm not really using faceplant too much right now. I'm more in Serum 2. So I'm sort of using a lot more effects that are in the box, especially when it comes to distortion, because I find that when you put distortion, it definitely matters. And I don't really want to put Serum and then Snap Heap and then another instance of Serum effect. It gets pretty messy and convoluted. Not super interested in that. Overdrive works about as well as faceplant Faturator, so no complaints there. But yeah, we just have the envelope on the drive and on the mix. Nothing too crazy there. A little bit of reverb, give it some extra room, whatever. I'm not the best with reverb, so I just kind of put some settings in and hope for the best. And I think it sounds good. So there you go. And then, you know, OTT, can't go wrong. Pretty sure I literally just changed the gain. That's pretty much usually what I do with OTT. Not super sure there's too much else to cover here. Maybe the sound, let's see. Pretty sure this is just a preset. Yeah, cinematic chords or brass doesn't. Yeah, sure. Sounds cool. Didn't even EQ it in this. I probably ended up EQing it in the final version. Can check real quick if I ended up doing that, but I'm not entirely sure. I didn't name anything, so it could have even not made the cut too. So let's see. Did it make the cut? No, it did not make the cut as a background layer. So that doesn't even matter. So let's cover the sub. So I have been making giant ass subs for a long time. And so I feel like I've gotten fairly good at them, but they're always pretty straightforward and not too complicated. I've shown quite a few people how I make my subs. Okay. This is a sub. Anyways, so we have a analog BD sign. I've been using this wavetable for years as a sub. I don't remember. I know some producer at some point said this wave is sick. And then I tried it out and I was like, okay, he's right. Cool. And then I've been using it since. But yeah, let's take out this wavetable and we can see what that sort of takes away and the noise. This just adds like very minor harmonics. Like the level is not very high on this, so it doesn't add that much. And then AC1 noise. Honestly, like any noise really works. Like you could do Geiger, and it's going to give you a different sort of effect. Alpha noise can be really interesting. But I don't even remember what it was on, but whatever. I don't think it matters that much, to be honest. But let's just do bright white. I mean, they're all going to work fairly well in their own way. So yeah, pick whichever kind of noise you want. These could be interesting. Noise, one shot off or replay. Yeah, could play with that, see what happens. And then MG low, cut out some of the highs. Only on oscillator C if we take it off. Could have been even more interesting, but doesn't really matter. Okay, one sec. My night light is turning on for some reason, so let me just turn that off. Yeah, okay, great. Now continuing on with effects, pretty straightforward. We have a overdrive at stack 4. All the other settings are the same. That's it. And then the sort of, I don't know, something that I do a lot with most of my sounds is I use LFO1 to make a pitch envelope, and then I usually put this at plus 25, and then you can adjust it with this however much you want, and you can even slow down the rate or accelerate it to get interesting tonalities with subs, basses, whatever you want with it. It's gonna work. It's gonna be great. But yeah, let's listen to the sub real quick. Oh, I believe I have mono legato and then porta. I probably should have set it to always, but maybe it sounded weird. Honestly, it doesn't make a difference. So that's probably why I didn't set it. But yeah, I'm sort of learning a little bit about this project file too, because I did this all pretty damn quick. This was in the span of, I believe 2 weeks to make this, but I didn't get to work on it every day. And even the days that I got to work on it, it was max an hour to 2 hours. So yeah, I pretty much speed ran this as much as possible and just worked fast and made decisions fairly quickly, a lot quicker than I normally do. So we have OTT 25%. We have Bit Warmer. This is an effect that I've been using since, I don't know, Ableton 8 or something. For some reason, someone said it was great. And then I listened to it and I thought, hey, this is pretty good. Then we just have an EQ. So while I was working on this project, I didn't really have many effects. I'm working off my girlfriend's laptop right now because my PC is not working right now. I think the motherboard died or something, so I'm gonna have to replace that. So I sort of had to recollect all my plugins as I was working on the project. So one thing that you'll notice is there is a bunch of sidechain compression going on, which is generally not what I do. But for this project, I sort of had to do it. And then we have a utility sidechain also for the drops because I didn't have LFO tool, shaper box, or anything to really sidechain. So instead of like taking my eye off the prize, I just decided, all right, I'm just going to improvise and use some techniques that I know work and are going to get me the same results as if I had those tools anyways. So I'm just going to show you a couple of the main patches in the actual, I don't even know what you would call this, maybe a bridge. I don't know. I'm not super technically savvy on music structure or naming. I just write music, and that's pretty much as deep as it goes. Okay, this is the lead. This is a preset. It's called LD Vandal, but as you can see, there's a star, meaning it's been edited. I'm honestly not sure what's been edited, but this is sort of what it came to be. So we have a sub at octave 0. It's a square wave. I use a lot of the sub as like a third or fourth oscillator. I find it quite interesting to do. We've got a mini bass wavetable at -3 with signfold, unison, all that jazz. Honestly, I don't think a lot of these values or numbers matter a whole lot. I think that the most important concepts to sort of understand is the idea behind the bass and not so much the specifics of the bass. It's more about learning what makes the bass tick than the specific values on the serum itself. That's like the best way to learn sound design is watching other people make sounds and then understanding why they're making certain decisions and not what specific number they're reaching to make that decision. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's something that I really want to impart on younger producers, because for some reason I was checking out some of like Moonboy's videos and I just saw in the comments, because he didn't cover exact values on the serum, people were getting upset and saying that this wasn't like a good tutorial. But if you're watching tutorials for exact number values, you're watching tutorials completely the wrong way, in my opinion. It's not about the values, it's about the concepts, right? And we'll get into that a little bit later, because I actually have been using a technique that Odd Profit taught, I think 6 months ago or something. And I've just been iterating on it for the last like 6 projects, and it's been really fun. But I'm not using his exact methodology. I also did it wrong by accident, just working off memory. But happy accidents happen, and you don't get those happy accidents without working off the spirit of the patch and not just copying the patch. Hopefully that makes sense. So I believe I probably changed the envelope. That was probably one of the biggest things. Tweaked some of these macros to make it fit the sound better. And then probably, yeah, added some overdrive distortion and potentially some extra OTT at the end. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, this patch is like relatively interesting, so I probably didn't have to do a crazy amount to get it to fit, but I definitely wanted something probably a lot pluckier than whatever they had at the beginning, unless this is like, it's a lead, so there's a chance that it was plucky, but probably not. Okay, so we have a bunch of effects here. So let's start with the EQ. So we have our first EQ, which is essentially just a low cut, because this sound is really meant to be in the high end. I maybe even could have cut more, who knows? But yeah, I cut pretty much the entirety of the lower frequencies in the sides, and that's kind of that. And then this is going into like a reverb rack. So we have sort of the dry and then the wet. I didn't EQ the mids, but I've already done it prior, so I don't think it matters too much here. But yeah, I sort of EQ'd here and then put a reverb, and that's sort of that. That's kind of the chain, -12 on the output. And then, yeah, I've used this sort of rack, used it a lot in the drop and probably a few other places. Another reverb, just this one is like a throw reverb. So if I, like, for example, I think I use it here. No, I don't. Did I end up using it anywhere? No. Okay, I'm not entirely sure why that's there. So whatever, that's fine. Doesn't really matter. I might have just copied like the effects that I was using for certain things. Shifter on here, I'm pretty sure it's doing literally nothing. Yeah, I think I probably tested out an idea, didn't work out, and then didn't really think about it again. Bit warmer. I'm using this all over the project, so get used to seeing that. So yeah, I'm pretty sure we're done with the intro. So now we can sort of get into the drop part here. So I'm going to play on the main project file, and then we'll go into the stuff that's not actually frozen and flattened. So let's hear it there. Okay, so that's the buildup. As you'll have seen in the intro of the video, Moonboy quite liked this buildup. To be honest, I don't feel like I'm that great at making buildups, but hey, maybe I just have a wrong read on my musical ability, but I've never thought my buildups were that great. So anyways, but he quite liked it, so let's kind of break it down. So there might be some stuff missing here, but I'm going to capture sort of the essence of the buildup. So yeah, so we have our kick, which changes from the intro. I tend to use like 3 or 4 different types of kicks throughout a song just to differentiate the parts. And because I don't think the kicks that I select for one part necessarily fit the other. Pretty simple. This kick is pretty bare bones, nothing going on here. I don't even know if this is from his pack. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Actually, I'm almost 100% sure it's not. Anyways, and then we have our clap. as you'll see, there's quite a few samples that are not from his pack. His beta pack was not bad. It just isn't necessary. It doesn't necessarily fit how I produce. So I sort of had to get some of my own stuff from my own reserves, which is fine. I think making, you know, dubstep or Tearout out of a hypertrap pack, well, not really what it's necessarily meant for. So yeah, you might have to adjust things here or there. But yeah, anyways, for the clap, just an EQ. I didn't even do the sides. I could have. I don't think it would have made a giant difference either way, but I didn't do that. There's an impact. I believe that's in the final version of the song. And then this crash, which is quite noisy. So I'm hoping that I fix that for the final project file, but again, not entirely sure. I know I did it for the drops though, so at least that part's covered. All right. And then we have our lead here, which is it being pitched up? Yeah, so both are being pitched up. I also brought back the piano that I used in the intro, which I don't even think I showed. But I put it here just to fill out some empty spaces. And then we have, you know, riser, you know, just a bunch of risers. You know, faded, different types of way EQ'd, put some reverb on it. I guess. Yeah. I've been using crystalline, but I am sort of not super down for some of the baby audio stuff. Doesn't quite fit how I produce. I'm not saying they're bad plugins. They just don't quite fit how I produce. And then, yeah, throughout the intro and builds, I have this sample that I got from the pack. I doubt you can even hear it throughout any of the track, but it builds a little bit of energy, so it's there. These are really just background layers. They don't matter that much. They matter for space, but you know, they're not the most like important things in the world, but they do add. So this is sort of what makes the build flow as much as it does. Just simple vocal chant. I believe I had a version of this with a bunch of effects on it that I ended up just freezing and flattening so the tails didn't implode. Actually, no, I didn't, because this is still the original sample. It would be frozen if it was Kiss, so that's fine. Yeah, that's pretty much the build. There's just one more thing to show off, and then we're pretty good. Then we have, which vocal sample is it that I use? Okay, so it's this one. Wait, it is not that one. And it's just dry. It's from the pack. There you go. Moonboy did a pretty good job on that sample, so I actually didn't have to do anything to it. Yep. And then we just have a startup that I hopefully used. Yeah, I used it again. Nice. I try and keep as much as I can of the song symmetrical, just so you don't like get lost as a listener. All right, last thing we're gonna look into here is there should be a frequency shifter somewhere. I'm just not sure. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So we have a shifter here. This is a trick that I've used for probably the last like 4 or 5 years, where at sort of this part of the drop, so you have all this at about halfway, I start, you know, pitching the fine down, and that's what gives it that sort of weird texture. And then that's also affecting the sub that I flattened. And it's making it sound very weird. Again, all these things are texture, so it's all good. Okay, so we're gonna go into the actual final project file for this because it's gonna sound a lot better. So that's the drop. I think it's pretty interesting. I think it was pretty fun to make. Here we go. Now we have the correct one. So let's get into this drop here. I just have to mute like one thing because I know it causes problems. So I think if I mute this, we'll be good. Yeah, for some reason, there's like a bunch of noise at the end of this sample that I eventually had to cut out in the final project file. So I just edited all the fades, took a little bit of time, but in the end I made it work and it sounded fine, but I'm not going to redo all that here. So yeah, that's kind of that. This project file is super messy because I was working really quickly. So I do apologize for that. Normally my project files are a lot cleaner. It helps that I normally have a template. I don't have my template right now, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and make that probably in the next few days. But yeah, let's get into let's start with the drums. Let's start with drums here. There's not a whole lot going on. The most complex thing is probably the snare that I made, but that's about it. Normally my drums are a little bit more interesting, but again, I was sort of trying to work as much as possible within the sample pack, but couldn't really do it as much as I wanted to, just because at least for the style of samples that I use, this pack was not really it for me. So that's kind of that. So I'm going to check out the group processing for the actual final version, just so I can give you relatively accurate information on like what's going on. So yeah, so we have a glue compressor. I use glue compression on my drums all the time. I've done this for probably 2 or 3 years now, and it's worked great. I work a lot by just listening to what sounds good and not necessarily focusing on what's correct, right? That's sort of how I produce. Even if I know something is technically wrong, if it sounds right, I'm still going to do it just because I don't care about being technically right. I just care about doing things right for the song. I treat every project as an individual piece. And so even though something may have worked in a prior project, if it doesn't work for this one, I'm not going to force it in there pretty much. And I encourage you to sort of view projects and music the same. I can't force you to do anything, but that's sort of what's worked for me so far. So yeah, if you want to follow suit, fair enough. Okay, so that's the drum bus sort of processing. I'm pretty sure it's pretty much the same. I was testing out some ozone stuff, didn't end up making it on the track, but that's fine. So we have our glue compressor, we have our Pro Q. I was noticing some weird frequencies around 75. This probably is a bit different in the final project. It's so hard to figure out which one is which. Yeah, so in the final project, like a dynamic EQ around 75, and then I increased the highs. That's pretty much it. And then here we just have the dynamic EQ around 75. Again, this is really going to be track dependent. It's not always going to be the same. A very slight push in the transients. That's about it. And then a clipper just to catch some of those peaks going into the master. That's about it. We have our kick, which is 2 kicks. I couldn't really find a kick that I liked or that worked super well with what I was writing, so I ended up combining a couple kicks and making this. So we have sort of body and then a high layer. Probably could have EQ'd this more and better, but that's all good. It does what it's supposed to. So at the end of the day, not a huge deal. It's not about being perfect. It's about doing what's right for the song. And if it works for the song, then it works for the song. That's all it is. So here we have our percussion / crashes stuff going on. For some reason, they're all grouped together. Normally that isn't what I do, but yeah, normally it would be something like this, but whatever, it works. It's fine. So yeah, let's just undo that. So yeah, let's check out these snares here. So let's go control, solo them. So first layer we have, very short, snappy layer, no effects on it. Then we have a snare that I've used quite a lot. It's just like some really sort of harsh snare. And then we have this layer. which is a pretty typical Tearout snare, but combined all together, it just made this really nice, strong snare that I was looking for. So there you go. All right. And then we have 2 crashes. One of them I'm having to mute just because there's a bunch of noise at the end, but I ended up fixing that in the proper project file. Here we have literally no effects. So that's cool. And then I ended up just doing all the effects in the group processing. So we have OTT 14%, nothing else has changed. Bit warmer, I turned down the output by like 5.1. EQ, didn't even do any mid-side EQ. Probably could have, maybe did in the final project, but normally probably do that. And then maybe even add like a boost here, some like this. So you add a little bit of high end in the mid sides. That way it doesn't impact really anything else. And yeah, so that's cool. And then we have transient shaper. I like to do this a little bit. I'm just doing -8 on the attack. That's it. And then a utility. That's my sidechain for this project. So I'm sidechaining the crashes to the kick and snare. Pretty straightforward. All right, so let's cover sidechaining here. First off, so utility sidechain. I believe this is at 32. Yep. So I'm just cutting the first 32 Sure. Let's go with that. 30 seconds of the first bar, and then the basses kick in. You could also do interesting stuff by adding track delays. I honestly haven't really experimented with that too much over the years. Might end up taking some of those tricks just because I'm hearing about it more and more. But yeah, let's cover this first patch here. So we'll just go here. So that's what the bass sounds like alone. So this is using the odd profit spectral oscillator technique, sort of, not fully. I actually did it wrong here, but it sounded good. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that much. Just do what sounds good. Even if you get it wrong, it's fine. But it does take some level of finesse and skill to sort of develop that ear for what is technically wrong but sounds right. So do keep in mind that you might make some trash music for a bit, but that's okay. We all make really trash music for a while, and then eventually, if we're lucky enough, then we make some good stuff. So yeah, maybe lucky isn't the right word. So let's turn off pretty much everything just so we can sort of hear what it sounds like. So let's start with the sub. Why not? There's actually a bunch of clicking, which I didn't know. So that's interesting. -2 on the sub. I think I wrote all these notes in D2. Yep. So -2 just makes sense for the sub. I'm cutting off the sub and I'm not running it like direct out. So it's a dirty sub. So it's going to have a bunch of like stereo effects. So we're going to want to cut that out later. So we'll keep that in mind. But this is what it sounds like with the addition of another sine wave, analog BD sine -1. This is reverbed out. All right, and now we add our like first sample. This is literally a one-shot sample from the pack. Let's see if we can find it. Synth one-shot, sweet. Okay, what? There we go. This should be it. I actually didn't pitch it to the right octave, by the way, but it ended up sounding okay. So I guess it doesn't matter. And it's more like a texture layer, I would probably say anyways. Like it's more tonal anyways, so I don't think it matters that much. So already we have like a lot of what this sound is just by adding a spectral version of that same sound. It's not pitched up or down in any way here. It's literally just stock pretty much. And then we send it through a filter. And then everything is getting sent through the filter and the key track is on. And then we have our first LFO on some of these levels. So it's going to this level, that level. I believe the noise is on too. I actually don't remember if the noise was on in the patch, so maybe I can check here. Okay, I don't think it was, so there you go. Noise wasn't on. So that's sort of the bare bones basics of this sound, and then we can actually get into the effects. So first effect in my chain is pretty much always a distortion, usually overdrive these days, just find that it sounds the best. Then we have a convolve. This is the part that Odd Profit covers. I didn't even change the IR gain and stuff like that. Just changed a bit of the mix, decay time, and put it on electric cab 2. And then we have a dimension expander. I turned down the mix completely for the hyper. And then I turned on the dimension to like 9 and 34. Again, exact values don't matter. It's all about sound and, you know, just bro, you're making music. Just listen with your ears. That's all it is. Just listen to music with your ears. I'm seeing so many of these, like these new visual things, right? Like Moonboy is very guilty of this, where he has just all here is just some like visual telling you what is happening in the song visually. I'm not really bought into that yet. Maybe one day I will be, but at the moment, I'm still of the mindset of we're making music, so listen to the damn music that you're making. Yeah. That's sort of where I'm at. But hey, I don't know if I'm wrong. I don't know if I'm right. So who cares? I kind of want to see what happens when you take off the convolver. Yeah, the distortion does a lot. What if I just do this? So yeah, the convolver actually takes off a lot of that high end, and then I'm adding it back with some compression, which is interesting. Something I didn't even notice I was doing at the time. And then I'm re-distorting that, but only by 2 stacks this time. And then I'm increasing the drive. And then last thing, we have a LFO2 set like this, master tuning 12%. Usually I do 25. Here it's 12. Not entirely sure why. Again, I probably just listened to it and just thought, hey, this sounds nice. I'm going to use that. That's about it. Yeah, and then the rate is set to a bar. And this changes throughout the song, I believe. I'm almost positive. Okay, let's cover the sub now. This is the fun part. Okay, so sub. Sorry about that. Sub is going to be pretty straightforward. So we have a triangle wave, -2 octaves, alpha noise. This is a great noise that I found for subs. I've used it a ton, and then we're running it through an overdrive 2 stack and then an OTT. That's it. The OTT is not even at max. It's 25%. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then we have the same settings. Oh, actually, it's not even the same settings. Oh, it should have been. Okay, that's okay. This should have actually been at 12 because technically it's not hitting the same notes, but it's not something I noticed, so I don't think it matters that much. And I don't think anyone would have ever noticed this without seeing this. So, okay, that's fine. Again, everybody makes mistakes, especially when you're rushing through these projects to hit a deadline. Little mistakes like that can easily happen. Like, no doubt. So yeah, if you've made similar mistakes in the past, don't worry about it. Happens to the best of us. Probably any song that you've listened to by your favorite producer, there's like 17 mistakes that they're like, fuck, I should have fixed that. I knew about it. I wrote it down, but I forgot to fix it. Guarantee it. Every single track that I've released has at least one of those stories in there. So yeah, let's try and figure out what's going on here. Whoa, that's a sound. Did I actually use that? I didn't even know I kept that in there. Okay, sure. Okay, let's see. So we have a little like breakdown, break part, whatever. So this is pretty, easy part. Basically, all I did is I sped up I believe it's this chord here. Yeah, so this one is the sort of like it's the mid-range. No, it's not. This one is. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, this is why you want to name your tracks, boys, because you're going to get lost in your project files. Yeah, so it's this, except it's sped up a bunch. I believe it's like sped up twice. So yeah, and then pitch down. Yeah, so there's a bunch of reverb and a filter, just so it like filters in so it doesn't come too much out of nowhere. It does still come out of nowhere a little bit just because of how short the section is, but it still works, so that's fine. Whoa. Oh, I'm like way too far on the project file. That's what's going on. So we have this. Little moan. I don't know. It was in the pack. I think I put it there as a joke and then I never took it out. because I probably forgot it was there. And it just sort of fits, I guess, so it's fine. So yeah, I guess I put the moan in like a spectral oscillator and then just threw on a bunch of effects. And it ended up just doing that. And then I'm pitching up the coarse pitch 50%, 2 bars. That's all this sound is. And it sounds... And then I'm mod wheeling it for some reason. I don't know why. I'm not sure the mod wheel is doing anything. I'm not sure this is meant to be automated. I think I was trying to automate something else. So, sure, we'll go with that. Okay, and then yeah, last part, we just have like a snare roll. Yeah, I believe this is like 16ths into 32. Yeah, 16ths into 32. We still have the snare going. I don't know if that is correct or what I meant to do, but it's fine. Yeah, because it sounds weird without it. Yep. Okay, cool. Perfect. Going into the second part here, probably not a whole ton of changes. Oh, wait. Did I even cover all the effects down here? Yeah, I'm super sorry. I don't think I did. I don't think I did. I will now. Continuity is not going to be great for this video, but yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so we have a reverb throw. This is mainly for when the sound or the drop kicks in. It's like starts at 79% and then ends all the way at 0 by the end. Decay all the way to 4.5 seconds. I don't think I changed anything else. I'm not the best with reverbs. I really just go with what I think sounds relatively good. And also I didn't have any like special reverbs for this project, except for crystalline, which I don't even think I had when I wrote most of it. I was just testing out crystalline a little bit. It will not be a purchase for me. I'm not going to lie. I thought it was great for a while, but then I kind of going back on it. Anyways, doesn't matter. Then we have OTT at 18%. We have a basic EQ. I believe I probably changed some of these things in the final mixing stage, but this is sort of the working EQs type thing, which is fine enough for our purposes. Yeah. There's a lot of the sub being kept. I'm pretty sure that I cut a decent amount in the actual project. If I go here and I go check, let's see. Yeah, I cut up to 143. So yeah. So yeah, let's hear this second drop here. Pretty sure the only difference is this oscillator is pitched down. I'm almost sure there might be some tweaks to the FM. That's about it. Yeah. Automation on the FM, -4 on this sample. Anything else here? Not that I can tell. Yeah, I'm pretty sure everything else is the same. Yeah, noise is off. Potential. Oh, and sub is different. Yep, that's about it. Okay, well, pretty straightforward to explain there. But everything, no, everything else is the same. 12% here. Yep. All right. Yeah, everything else is the same. Easy enough. So yeah, not too much to explain there. I mean, it's the same sound, just with -4 on the oscillator. I'm just going to double check that that's even right. No. Oh, yeah. Literally the only change then is the modulation on the FM, which is giving it that extra tonality. And the switch in the sub. Yep, that's it. That's as simple as it really gets. But again, like sometimes just keep it simple, man. Like you don't have to bash your head against the keyboard all day to figure out the most complex things, you know? Like I have no idea if I'm going to win this competition. My goal was really just to make a track and not necessarily win, because I don't know how you write a track that's going to win a remix contest. Like all you can do is write the best track that you're able to do, and that's pretty much it. That's the only thing that you can control in these things is writing the best track that you can at the current, in the current timeline, and that's about it. So yeah, now we're gonna go into our second part of the track, which is gonna be another intro, which again, there's probably terminology for all this stuff. I actually never learned it. So yeah, I know how to write these different parts of the song. I just have no idea what they're called. So there you go. Something sounds different here. Oh, yeah, I added this. For some reason, it's very distorted. I believe these are strings, but I just pitched them up quite a bit to get them to sound weird and interesting. They're not EQ'd here, but in the actual project file, they probably are. But yeah, I mean, I think the only big difference starts here. Yeah, that's pretty much the only difference. Can we see it here? So in the actual project file, it's not like that. Let me just show you real quick. So in the actual project file, it's the right. I'm just repeating the same synth as I believe here. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So yeah, really we're going into the same build and pretty much everything. So I'm not really going to show that again, but that's kind of that. But yeah, I can go into the actual fun part. I believe, honestly, I really liked working on the entire song, but definitely the drops were the most fun. They were a little bit challenging. I didn't really cover like how I wrote all the notes, and the reality is it's just a bunch of trial and error. That's really the key to a lot of my music is trial and error. I am not a pianist or have any particular music theory or musical ability that would make me better than you at any of this stuff. So really, I just work hard and try and find things that work. So that's how I write my melodies. You could call this like a melodic dubstep if you want. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I just, found a flow that works and just kind of tweaked it throughout the song, right? So you have like... So yeah, you just have like, call, response, call, response, call, response, call, response. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I believe it was phase 1. I watched like a Disciple video forever ago where phase 1 talked about call and response. And ever since then, now I understand how I write music. But before that, I had no idea what I was doing. But that's what I was doing the whole time. Normally, I would actually use like this part would actually be a completely different synth. But for some reason for this song, I couldn't make that work. And so I just kept it the same, except I just tweaked these parts and made them kind of call response instead of like the call being 1 bar and then the response being 1 bar. It was just like a half bar call response quick type thing. And then this one is just like a 1 bar response. Again, sometimes you just find little things while you're working on something that works that isn't necessarily what you would normally do. But you'll see that I sort of changed that again in the second drop, because it does work with the second drop with the sound selection that I had on hand that I made. Yeah. Let me get the right project file again. Let's go with the completed track. So let's go. Okay, So let's cover that second drop here. In terms of drum, pretty much nothing changes. So I'm not even going to cover those. I don't know why these were in the bass track for pretty much the entirety of the project file. I don't know what I was doing with that, but sure, it's just been there. So let's cover this like re-scream, whatever it is. I believe this is the first sound that I came up with for this part of the drop. So we have a sub on a triangle, another triangle wave. It's not even getting automated by the LFO. I find that it's kind of interesting if you don't always automate the levels with the LFOs. Frequencies ring out in like a weird way, and that can add a lot of texture to your sounds. Instead of doing sort of like outside of the serum layering, I do a lot of layering within the serum. I think that sounds good, but there's not really a right way to do it. I do think this part is lacking a little bit in stereo width. That's one thing I will critique about myself, but that's okay. You know, given more time, I could have probably fixed a lot of these issues, but I literally like finished this track like 4 hours before the cutoff. Finished, we'll say. This isn't what I would have passed off as like a finished track for my own releases, but for, again, time that I was given, it's good enough. So fuck it. Yeah, I think I changed the sample so we can go here. Okay, I believe that's what it is. Unless it's a crash. It might be a crash. It might be a crash. I'm not sure. I can't. Synth one. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Yeah, I don't know what it is because I can't read past that point. Is there a way? I have no idea how to find out. It might be a crash. I'm pretty sure it is. Can I hear it? Oh my Jesus, that sounds horrible. Okay. Yeah, it might be a crash. Not sure. So we're running all these things again. I think I just changed the sample, and because of how long this LFO is, it allows you to get these really weird timbres and like frequencies. Yeah, I also changed this from one shot to manual, and then I tweaked it to about here. Again, with using like spectral oscillators, you can switch between all these different modes and they're going to give you a bunch of different results. Manual can be kind of interesting to like pick certain frames in the sample that will give you a variety of tonalities. Usually the further you get, the more highs you get, and the closer you are to the initial is more lows. That's what I found so far. And then same trick for, my master tuning, but the curve is less close to here and more extended out. And then we're doing that at 1 bar. And then I have a BN12 instead of my low pass, I believe, that I used for the other drop. So yeah, no noise still. Same effects here. Literally nothing's changed. Yeah, nothing's changed at all. And then for the effects here, again, nothing's changed. I don't think I covered this in the other part, but I'm using a sidechain reverb send within its own channel kind of thing. You can do this in a send or you can do this in its own channel. I don't really think it matters that much which one you choose. Yeah, some people swear by sends, some people swear by doing everything in the same track, but at the end of the day, I don't think it matters. Just pick whichever one you prefer and that's fine. But yeah, I'm sidechaining it to itself. So I'm sidechaining it to its own channel. So yeah, the reverb only plays when the main bass is not playing, which is like pretty infrequent, but it does ring out a little bit. So kind of helps it fill some of those gaps. Yep. Okay, cool. Got that. Let's listen to the main bass. This is just like the intro bass, and then we have a vocal sample after. Oh, which is not playing out because I believe I had thermal on it because I was testing out thermal, but I actually don't really like this plugin. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need more time with it, but I didn't like it that much, so I didn't end up buying it. I was just doing like a trial of it just to see. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I would rather use like trash over thermal, but that's just me. Oh, and I guess there's a thermal here too. Okay, there we go. Now we're good. Okay, so let's see. So we've got our sample here, and then yeah, this is the same sample as the other sound, and then I did like a basic shape FM from B. So we're double FMing now. Why are we double FMing? Because I just tried different stuff and it just worked out. There's not really any other reason than trial and error. That's usually how it works for me, is I just tried it and I was like, hey, this is sick. And that's about it. Yeah, so we're FMing from B and we're automating that with our LFO1. Rate is on halftime or half, sure. Yeah. And then we have our LFO2 on the quantize. Sure, why not? I mean, I'm sure that you've had these moments where you just like look at the stuff that you did in a project and you're like, what? Why did I do that? But again, if it sounds good, fuck it. Who cares? It doesn't matter. You don't need a reason for it to sound good. Or you don't need to understand the reason why it sounds good if it sounds good. If you're super interested and you think it's going to make a giant difference for you in the future, then sure, learn the reason. But I've been producing for long enough to realize that, like, even if you don't necessarily understand why something works, it doesn't really matter, because most people don't. 100% of every producer that you listen to has these moments in their tracks. If you told them, pull up this project file and tell me why you did this, they'd be like, I ain't got nothing for you, buddy. I ain't got nothing for you. And yeah, that's just the truth. Okay. So -2 on the octave for this sample. I'm going on the impression that it's a crash, but I could be wrong. And then we switched this sample to a snare. Sure. I don't know why. But again, I think with a lot of these sounds, especially with this Tearout-esque part of the track, I just throw like a snare in there or like a crash or like I had a lot of these tonal layers that I would throw in there, but since I'm not working on my actual computer, I don't have those anymore. And so I'm kind of going through my splice to try and find where they are. And then we're keeping that BN12 with, you know, the LFO on the first frequency and then the cutoff and all that resonance up. And then all the effects are the same. And I believe the master tuning is probably the same. Where is it? Main tuning. Yeah, they changed it to main tuning. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Why not? Yeah. 12% still. Yep. Great. None of these are like weird polarities. Nope, not at all. Perfect. Yep. Okay. That's the sound. And then I delayed the attack by 25 milliseconds, I believe, on all these serums, just so it doesn't hit as soon as the kick hits. I don't know how much of a difference that makes. I believe that's actually the track delay that I saw Virtual Riot uses, ironically enough, but I don't know if I took that from him or if that was just something I tried. Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't know if I stole or not. Not sure. Okay, so we're just missing one sample that probably had a thermal on it, so I just got to turn that off and then we're good. Yep. There's like a knock in that sample that when I was working on this song, I thought someone was knocking on like a wall or like the ceiling or something, and it tripped me out the entire time I was working on it until I figured out that it was this sample that has a knock at the end. Oh wait, it's not even that. It's it's this. This has a knock. Wait, where is the knock? Did I cut it out? I think I might have cut it out. I don't know. I know that there was, okay, yeah, I sound crazy. Sure. Okay, well, I swear to God, there was a knock. There's a knock somewhere in this project that used to be there or is still there that tripped me out when I was working on this part so much. I repeatedly took my headphones off to try and figure out what the knock was until I realized it was in the song. Okay. Yeah. All right. Crazy moment over. Yeah. And then, I mean, we can look at these, but this is just literally just one note. And then I'm just, found a flow that works. And then I'm editing that flow throughout the song. And then because I'm not using like a super sharp like a rate, like the rate of the LFO1 is on half, I can do these like longer notes and it gives you different tonalities. That's I think that's actually a pretty useful tip, because I think a lot of people are gonna write these basses with these super like tight quarter note LFOs, quarter note, eighth note triplets, or whatever it is. But honestly, if you can sort of make this sort of shape and keep the rate moderately high, sometimes even 2-bar works, by the way. I've written songs that are Tearout with 2-bar LFOs. I'm not even kidding you. I don't have any of my old project files. I can't show it off, but I promise you this works. I promise you this works. And then, you know, again, just playing with, you know, placing notes differently, switching all the patterns. I'm not like, I don't know. I don't really hear music in my head, so I just tweak things until it sounds good. I believe I got this sort of writing style from like deadmau5 from watching his masterclass when I was first learning music production. And yeah, I've kind of stuck to it. I don't know if that's something I'm gonna change in the coming years. Like I'm a little bit more interested than I used to be in getting like MIDI controllers and like a drum pad machine, because I actually do finger drum a lot, like just when I'm fucking around at work. So could be interesting to see what I can come up with if I had those tools at my disposal, but not something I have just yet. Not something I'm gonna, you know, run to the store right now to get, because I don't think it matters that much. Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna have to delete yet another thermal. I should have flattened it before the license expired, but that's okay, because I don't think it made that much of a difference. It just added like maybe a little bit of stereo width and some extra stuff, but yeah, I could have done that on its own. But yeah. So yeah, it's literally the same sound as the first one. Yep. Same sound, except we are going from a D to a, what is this? An A? Sure. And then we have another one here. Just a short one. I didn't really cover the sub yet, so I guess we can, but I'm pretty sure it's disappointingly the same. Yeah, it is. It really is the same. I maybe could have tweaked it a little bit more, made it more interesting, but time constraint, baby. How fun. It's all good though. I don't know, man. I had a ton of fun working on this track, and I think sometimes working with these constraints, be it like time, trying to like take as much from the sample pack as possible without stepping outside of it, having little constraints on songs, because I actually think it helps me be more creative, like working in a box with rules and then finding creative ways to get around the rules is kind of fun. That's helped me a lot with writing in the last few years. You know, whether it's like I'm gonna try and only use Serum for the entire song, or like if you have a new plugin you want to learn, I'm going to make everything out of this plugin except for like drums or whatever. But everything else is made from that plugin. That one that can teach you how to use a plugin very quickly. But it can also just be a fun challenge. We can look at the patch real quick, but I'm not seeing anything different. Oh, actually, that's a lie. The pitch bend thing is now at 4 bars. Everything else is the same. Oh, I didn't end up... Oh, I did use this. Oh, I did miss this then. I'm super sorry. This video is a mess, guys. I'm really sorry. But yeah, it's a lot harder to explain a project file after the fact when you speed ran the project than when you've had like a month to work on it consistently. I don't know. Maybe I'm just making excuses. Who knows? Who cares? Okay, cut off. So yeah, 53 hertz. Again, it's a Combs filter. Just find what sounds good and use that. And then I have LFO on the resonance. Probably isn't making that much of a difference. And then we have, you know, the mix. I want to see, what does this even do? Very little. Very little. To the point where I'm not really noticing it too much. But I'm sure that it probably did some little thing. Yeah, it's like a super, super minimal amount of difference here. Like to the point where even now I can't really hear it. So yeah. Yeah, it can probably do with or without it. I don't think it makes a difference. But yeah, I basically use a splitter just so it doesn't affect the lows. But again, it's such a marginal difference that even if it was on the lows, honestly, it probably would have made a bigger difference if it was on the entire thing and not just the highs. But doesn't matter a whole ton. Yeah, for all these notes, honestly, I was leaving space for the snare. And then, so this plays out, the reverb plays out, snare hits. And then I don't know why this works, because there's a lot of gaps and a lot of spaces where it shouldn't maybe necessarily work, but it kind of does.
Let him have it.
Okay, so yeah, that's basically the track. We just have one more part to cover and then we're all done. So let's cover that and then we can get out of here, boys. Let's go. Okay, final part. Yeah, so we just have some like Analog Lab 5 instruments. These are generally like strings or like older synths that are just replaying I believe it's this melody here, because I had to actually go in like a prior project file to grab it. I like to do this a lot, is end the track on what it started on. I don't know if that's like correct, right, or something that you should do, but that's what I do a lot. So yeah, take that with a pinch of salt. I have no idea. Anyways, that's about that. I mean, that's pretty much the track. I mean, I can cover the master a little bit, maybe some of the groupings, but all right, attempt number 2 at explaining the master. Okay. So we have a limiter, an ozone limiter, which is going into the Pro Q4 at 40 hertz. We're only adding like a dB of dynamic EQing, taking out, again, just very like small minor changes in terms of like decibels. Just because keep in mind, like it's on the master, so it's affecting the entirety of the track. So when you're doing anything in the master, you want to keep it subtle. That's sort of the trick, to not make it sound crap. Unless you're going for like very specific effects, then you can go crazy, but there has to be a purpose behind it. All right, then we're running it through a glue compressor. It's literally just maxed. I actually think this should be like here or like here, but sure. I just put it on automatic. I'm pretty sure that was an accident, but that's okay. I don't think it ruined the track at all. Might have not made it better either, but that's okay. We all make little mistakes like that. Let's kind of see the difference here. Very, very subtle difference, if there's even realistically any. So, yep. Then some more EQing, mid-side stuff. Cutting a little bit of those lows here again. Yeah, boosting here a little bit on the sides because I cut. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Literally just an analog clip, no drive, no output, literally no changes. And then we have our +10 clipper going into our span. This is how I, check against other tracks, which can be sort of, helpful. These are just ripped. I didn't buy waves or anything. They're just ripped. So anyways, hope this has been helpful. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. This is quite long. So if you made it this far, shout outs to you, brother. Shout outs.